Hey everybody, I'm here with a quick video on Diddy. His trial is scheduled to begin May 5th. He was, him and his lawyers asking the court for more time. They wanted to delay the trial. They're claiming that, the prosecution is spoon feeding them information, not giving them information in enough time for them to prepare for the trial. But the judge said, oh, well, the trial is going to go forward on May 5th. So May 5th, jury selection starts, but they said opening arguments will happen as early as May 12th. So listen, Diddy, whatever y'all need to do, you got 5 law firms working for you. They need to work night and day and night to prepare your defense because the judge said it will move forward. Let me go ahead and share screen to give you the latest information and update on the situation. So Diddy's partial victory on forced labor fails to exclude sex trafficking evidence. Well, of course they're not going to exclude that because that's what you're on trial for. So yeah, he got it fell on that. So turns out the judge has ruled on these issues. The judge said prosecutors can't argue forced labor pertaining to one of Diddy's employees. However, the judge also ruled the prosecutors will be allowed to let in sex trafficking evidence against Diddy. The feds are calling Diddy out for asking a judge to exclude evidence from his upcoming criminal trial, claiming Diddy is just trying to postpone the fast approaching start date for the trial. According to new legal docs obtained by TMZ, Diddy is trying to exclude a bunch of evidence related to sex trafficking charges and the alleged free calls, claiming prosecutors turned over the evidence too late and didn't give him enough time to prepare his defense. I mean, well, which one is it? Was you too drunk, too high? Because the other day they said, he didn't have the mental capacity to commit these crimes. Now you're saying that you didn't get the evidence on time, to prepare for it. They're all over the place, and this is not looking good for Diddy. I feel like his goose is cooked. Let's take a listen.
These old photos of Diddy look nothing like he looks today in court, wearing a jumpsuit and sporting a lot more gray hair. And then the hearing went 50 shades of gray when Diddy's attorney says his client is a swinger, that he participates in the swinger lifestyle of group sex and multiple partners and fetishes. In fact, Mark DeGuffalo told the judge that this is quite common now in 2025, and he actually wanted to introduce the names, identities of other prominent swingers at trial, but the judge said no. Also, big news, no is what Diddy said to a plea deal agreement that was offered to him by the government. We don't have the details, but instead, Diddy said he's going to roll the dice, and this thing is going to trial. It involves a number of charges, among them sex trafficking. By the way, we heard that prosecutors are planning to tell the court and the jurors about a situation where Diddy may have forced one of the women at the center of the sex trafficking charges to undergo some type of medical procedure. So we've got sex trafficking charges, we've got racketeering charges against Diddy, and we have traveling to engage in prostitution. What is next in all of this? Well, we have dates. May 5th is when they'll be picking a jury, and May 12th, opening statements in the trial of USA versus Sean Diddy Combs.
USA versus Sean Diddy Combs will go forward on May the 5th. Thing is, the Fed says Diddy known for months about the evidence they plan to present at the trial, and he's just trying to get the judge to postpone the trial. Diddy insists the feds are hampering his ability to prepare his defense by continuing to tack on new evidence and allegations, even as the trial is set to begin next week. But the Fed said he's had plenty of time to prepare and is just stalling. So let's take another listen. I'll wait till this commercial back. In the docs, prosecutors take shots at Diddy, telling the judge Diddy request is a transparent attempt to narrow the scope of the proof against him at the trial by any means necessary, and to yet again make a last-ditch effort to secure an adjournment of the trial. As it stands now, the trial is set to begin next week, and as we reported, the judge is allowing prosecutors to show the infamous Cassie beating video, which prosecutors are saying, well, let's take a listen. I'm gonna say this. I think them showing that video
in the Diddy case now, it is kind of forming because the both sides are now taking stands on issues that are going to be critical to this case. And what is particularly interesting is what just happened with respect to drug use, which is going to be front and center in this case.
We know that in the indictment, prosecutors have said they believe that Diddy drugged his alleged victims to make them more compliant during his big parties, during freak-offs. So now the issue is about Diddy's drug use, and there is a battle over, as prosecutors describe it in these documents, his mental capacity and the testimony of a psychiatrist.
Now, this is going to get a little bit confusing, but I think we can unravel this. So here's what the prosecutor said.
Right. The prosecutor is saying we do not want this psychiatrist to testify to anything having to do with how drug or alcohol use affected Diddy's state of mind during these alleged crimes.
More specifically, whether it excused some of the conduct, whether Diddy, the prosecutors are saying that the defense wants to use the shrink to show somehow, this is what the prosecutors are saying, that even if Diddy committed a crime, he didn't have the intent to do so because he was so whacked out on drugs. That seems to be what the prosecutors are saying. But, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's, and this is my opinion on this, but I think I'm right on this. The defense is not saying that, well, it's a crime, but he didn't really mean it. The defense is saying what happened is not a crime at all. It's a lifestyle. It is a choice that Diddy and the alleged victims made, and that when they engaged in drug use, they did it freely, but there are things that happen when you use drugs.
Use these particular drugs.
And particularly like an MDMA or something like that.
But I know that's what you're theorizing could be what the defense is going to say. The reality is, in the documents, we don't know, right? Because
I think one way or the other, no matter how you slice it, what we're talking about is the issue of intent, right? You can't have a crime, at least this crime, without the intent to commit the crimes for which Diddy's been accused. They're saying it may be, Harvey, I think you're onto something here, that it may just be caught up in this entire lifestyle. There's no intent to commit a crime here. What there's an intent is to have sometimes drug using, people are consenting to drug use, and then it leads to a lot of sex, but that's all part of this party freak-off atmosphere, this swinging atmosphere, but it doesn't mean there was ever an intent to commit a crime, and it doesn't mean any crime was committed just because all the people were sort of wrapped up in this partying lifestyle.
I want to go just a tiny bit further than that. It's not even so much intent as what they did is what people do when they take drugs. We know the defense is going to say they're going to argue everybody voluntarily took these drugs, and that when you do, there are inhibitions that just go away. And it is part and parcel of doing this, even though the jury may not be familiar with it. This is what happens when people do drugs. I think that's the point of the defense calling the shrink.
The reality is we don't know. In the documents, there's a lot of it that is redacted that has to do with what this condition, the alleged condition is. So we can't tell for sure, but certainly prosecutors think that it's going to be something about his capacity to make decisions, because there's a part of it, I just want to read this part that says, they did not offer proper notice, the defense, about evidence of the effects of drugs and alcohol on a defendant's memory or cognitive function.
Now that could be.
So that's what prosecutors clearly think that the doctor is going to testify to.
But that may not be Diddy. That may be the alleged victims. See, that's the point, is that may go to not what Diddy's memory was, it's what the alleged victims' memories were. And I am sure the defense is not going to concede, oh, he committed a crime, but they're not going to say that. So I think the shrink is going to testify, when the alleged victims testify, their memories may be faulty because here's what happens with drugs. Again, I'm not embracing this. I'm just saying.
The problem with that is that Diddy also did those drugs.
Right.
Right.
So they're saying it's all the lifestyle, which is what we heard on Friday. Now, a huge blow to the defense is that on Friday, the prosecutors won, and the Cassie video is going to be admitted in this trial, and that is going to be critical.
Yeah, we know it's going to be critical. I mean, one, we've all seen the video. We know everyone has opinions about it, and we saw this in practice, when we did our last Diddy documentary, and we talked about his potential defense, we had a mock jury, and they saw the video.
And they also heard evidence. They heard the arguments on both sides, and they deliberated, and they were on 3 counts, and they were hung up on 2 of them. But on the sex trafficking, they convicted him unanimously. And I debriefed them and asked them what moved them.
How many people did this profoundly impact in making your decision, that Cassie video? Show of hands. So it really impacted you folks. Did it turn it for you?
Yeah.
Why?
Being a woman myself and seeing a woman like that just made me more sensitive to the whole case itself, and probably maybe more siding with the victims, seeing a victim instead of him being the person that was attacking her. So I can't side with him because I don't see anything done to him in that light that was done to her.
I didn't know much about the case at all, so I came in completely objective, and watching him beat his girlfriend, he's like prohibiting her from leaving as well. It's very distressing to watch.
It had a huge impact. And again,
You know what's interesting?
he's not
is
being
that
tried for that, but it is impactful.
what I thought was interesting is that the jurors who raised their hand, it was a cross section. It wasn't just white people. It wasn't just black people. It wasn't just men. It wasn't just women.
Everybody, yeah,
That's
absolutely. That's so important.
very telling.
And by the way, will be extremely important when it comes to jury selection. And
Right.
a lot of people think this case begins and ends with the composition of this jury.
Now, that video, I think, certainly plays a role in at least one of the questions, not several, that Diddy's defense plans to ask the potential jurors when jury selection begins a week from today.
This just came out.
Right. These are they filed 30 questions that they plan to ask during the voir dire process. Here are a few critical ones because they're clearly sex is going to be a big deal here. They said, there may be evidence in this case about people engaging in sexual relations with multiple sexual partners. Would hearing about that type of evidence be difficult for you? There was also a follow-up question about people cheating, where they say, look, there's gonna be evidence about people cheating on boyfriends or girlfriends. I think that is interesting because Diddy's explanation, I won't say defense, explanation for what happened in that Cassie beating video is that they were arguing, that was the tail end of an argument about him cheating with someone else.
That's right.
She had seen his phone.
His phone. Now, I'm surprised at that first question. What I'm surprised about are the words, would it be difficult for you? I'm surprised at that because I thought they were going to make it more about whether jurors would be judgmental about it.
Right.
Not that it's difficult, but do you look down on people who have this kind of lifestyle? Because I think that's what you want to hear. And I'm assuming they're going to ask that in follow-up questions.
Right.
But it's not about, is it hard to hear? It's, do you judge people poorly if they engage in that type of lifestyle?
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, is what the defense wants to hear.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's what they're trying to get to there. But obviously, there's a way they word these things and then
they can follow up. Right.
Just a couple of the other questions that are in there. There are a total of 30. One, this is interesting. Do you believe that wealthy people get away with things that the less wealthy do not?
That's the celebrity justice
That's the
question.
celebrity, exactly. Are you going to judge him because he's a celebrity? How are you going to feel about that? And then another one about drug use. Do you have any personal experiences or opinions about drug or alcohol use or addiction?
See, the hard one there is, are jurors going to be honest about that? Yeah, I've done cocaine and heroin or MDMA.
Well, you could also say, I have a friend and I saw what they went through, right? So, you know what I mean? Like, there's a way around. The juror doesn't have to go,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I did lots of coke.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, how far are these jurors going to go?
They're not going to go on trial. They're not suddenly going to find themselves on trial if they say, well, yeah, I did try MDMA.
Some of them are going to feel that way when they're asked that question. I just think that's a really it's an important one, but I think it's really interesting.
What's up, everyone? I'm AMG Benzo down here in Atlanta, and I have 3 things to hit on. The Cassie video is definitely play a big part in this whole the jury and what they decide to go with. The jurors being selected is going to be a major thing because it's going to be hard to answer those questions you all said. And them saying the intent behind Diddy's drug use, I just don't see that happening because at the end of the day, he runs several businesses. And I get that these happen at freak offs, but it's still, even when you look at the Cassie video, that happened during the day. So some of these incidents aren't all happening at this freak offs that they're talking about. But I don't know. I wouldn't want to be on the jury. That's just me.
Interesting.
I wonder how many people do want to be on that jury, because I think a lot do. I think a lot do.
I think a lot of people have made up their mind
This
just based on what they've seen so far.
this case is going to largely be determined by the composition of this jury.
That's for sure, but that's every case, though, right? Is determined by the composition of the jury, and then what the lawyers, how they present also. In docs, prosecutors say shots at Diddy, telling the judge Diddy request. I think I read that. Diddy, where am I at? Diddy's request is a transparent attempt to narrow the scope of the proof against him at a trial by any means necessary, and yet again to make a last-ditch effort to secure an adjournment of the trial. As it stands for now, the trial is set to begin next week, and as we reported, the judges allowed prosecutors to show the infamous Cassie beating video, which I think is going to sink him. I really do. I think no one can watch that video and not feel sorry for her as she's like holding her head for cover as he dragged her by her hoodie. It's a bad thing. He's sometimes, even though there's all this other breadcrumbs on the street about him, and so to speak, people saying he did this and he did that, and they're very horrific crimes. Sometimes it's things like this video that can sink you, and I think this video is going to sink him, right? Because it's evidence. You can't refute the fact that was you beating on her. Well, prosecutors saying the person who filmed the surveillance video on the iPhone 6 will testify at trial. Diddy denied the allegations against him, claiming he's a swinger, not a criminal. And here's the thing. He's not on trial for this beating, but the beating is going to play into that he is this mean, vicious person that forces people into stuff. And when you don't do it, you will suffer the consequences like Cassie did. And you can't, what are you going to do with that evidence, right? So anyway, guys, chat with me in the comments, and when I get opportunity, I will chat back. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that every time I upload a video, you will be notified. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. Everybody, thanks for watching. I appreciate y'all. Hit the like button. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.